What is going on, party people, and welcome to episode 28 of the Whatnauts Review Show, where each week we pick a brand new story to talk about. Could be a comic, could be a movie, could be an anime, could be something else. We read it, we watch it, we do what we have to do. We come back here and talk about it. My name is Kyle Springer, and I am joined by Melissa Wilkinson. Melissa, how are you?
I'm good, Kyle. How have you been this week?
It's good. This week has been good. A little bit long. I've been working a little bit longer at work to make up some hours that I missed last month, and then also to kind of preemptively make up hours for winter break, which I don't get paid for, but I can work extra like before or after to compensate.
Okay.
So that's nice. I've been a lot of work, which is not fun.
I have also been working a lot, which is just normal for me now. I am training a new person at work, and we clicked immediately, which was fantastic.
That's good.
It was like going to work at a slumber party every day. We became really fast friends, and I work on academic journals for the audience members. That's what I do, and it's a variety of a variety of journals. And I've got a couple like film and television, like media critique journals in there, which are my favorite ones. And I was showing her how to do these checks on all these new manuscripts. And we were looking at one of the TV journals. And I'm like, oh, this mentions Lost. That's awesome. Like, that was my favorite show. And nobody really talks about it anymore. And she's like,
Lost is
I
my
love
favorite
Lost.
show.
And I'm like, this is it. Like, this is why we like each other so much. We didn't even know it. Like,
which is kind of what you and I did.
Exactly. Lost fans always find other Lost fans, and we may not know until ages later that, oh, that's why we found each other.
We're always like, I thought I was the only one. No.
Yeah, it's this secret calling, like this red string of destiny that's like, you guys all liked the Lost finale and you're all going to be friends.
Sounds good. Well, let's see. This is episode 28. I noticed actually last week on the thing you said it was episode 26, but it was not. It was episode 27. So this is episode 28.
Oh no!
That is A-okay. I was like, oh wait, did she? Yep. Okay. Moving on. Who cares?
I will double check with you next time in case I hit I just miskey something in my notes.
Didn't we try and start it twice? Didn't we have some little hiccup? Maybe we did, and then it like on that second one, I think I never noticed it. But I apparently on the one that we kept, you were like, this is episode 26. And I was just like, I didn't notice. Anyways, we are here this week to talk about Venom. Not the movie, which is out right now. I have not gone to go see it. I was going to. I still could today if I really wanted to. But I don't think anyone else here at the Whatnauts is, because I was hoping to do a reactor core episode, knowing that it was going to be bad. Just like we should do a movie that is going to be a lot of fun and yet really bad.
Yeah, I've heard it's fun. One of my friends, like, he just randomly texted me like just before I was about to sit down and start reading this whole graphic novel, and he said it's a buddy comedy. I'm like, what do you mean it's a buddy comedy? Weird. I wasn't aware Venom had friends or could laugh.
Yeah, strange. But we are here actually to talk about some comics, some Venom comics. Venom, he kind of first appeared in if you want to get technical, Spider-Man had the suit first. He didn't know it was an alien. That all happened in Secret Wars. But once Venom kind of made the scene, it was around... I don't think it was exact. I think he was in issue before, but it was around issue 300 when we finally find out like who he is and what is happening of Amazing Spider-Man. But he became super popular, and within a couple years, they gave him his own title, and this was that first miniseries, Venom: Lethal Protector, which is what we are talking about this week. I'm a big Spider-Man fan. That's my favorite comic book character. I haven't read everything. That's still a ways away. One day I will catch up and read all of the stuff. But I haven't really read much Venom stuff. So I mean, it was always like, yeah, I know who he is just from being a big Spider-Man fan, but I had never really read something that was Venom-centric or like a Spider-Man Venom storyline. So this was my first kind of rodeo with Venom. I actually did a little bit more homework. Comixology Unlimited has it's a collection called Spider-Man: The Birth of Venom, and it collects all of the, like, I guess not all of them, but it collects a lot of the important first issues to kind of tell his story and what happened. So I read that, which is, I want to say, like 300 something pages of stuff, and then I read this. But yeah, I'm assuming this was also your first foray into Venom stuff.
Yeah, I have seen Spider-Man 3.
I'm sorry.
No, I had a great time. You should know me, Kyle. I've never come away from a movie like, waste of time.
Oh, I have, and that was one of them. That was the one when, like, bright-eyed little young me who just came off of Spider-Man 2 was just like, wow, Spider-Man and Venom? Hell yeah! It's gonna be great! And then I'm just sitting in the theater mortified, like, what is this? Movies can be bad! So, oh well. You live and you learn. So this was kind of your first time. You mentioned the movie, but
yeah, this is my first time sitting down and reading Mr. Venom.
Okay.
I think he's an interesting concept. I like that it's like a space goo and a normal human man came together and they fused into this new creature, this new persona that is really cooperative between the both of them. I liked that, like, insular, like, inside one body relationship.
Venom is a symbiote, and
yes,
that comes obviously from the name, or from the word symbiotic. So, yay, science. The more you know.
Goo for the lay people.
Yeah. It's a symbiotic relationship, which means they both are captains of the ship. So yeah, I had a good time. I think that this book was a lot of fun. It is very much of the times.
Yeah.
It is very early 90s. So yeah, let's start going into our general thoughts and synopsis for anyone that has not read this or wants to know what it is before they pick it up. What were you thinking? What were you expecting?
I was expecting something darker and angstier and more dramatic.
I was too.
And this is just almost a romp.
Yeah, that's a good word. Yeah. I did not know what to expect. One of my good friends has issue 1, I think, signed. And I'm sure he has it in some case or something. But I had always seen it, and I just by the look, just how Venom looks as a character with all of these teeth and the big long tongue and it dripping off of him, like like you just expect this kind of creepier, almost horror vibe. It's this monster. It's gonna eat people. It's gonna be bloody. It's gonna be gory, and this is very much like a '90s, like you said, just romp. It's an action film in comic book form, with like he's. At least in this book, he's almost like a Schwarzenegger type character.
Yeah.
Like one of those like extra muscly, macho, beefy action heroes that wants to do the right thing, but he's also this like monster. This is not going right. Don't eat that person. Come on, dude. Wah, wah. But yeah. So now that you've read it, let's do this synopsis.
Okay.
Venom kind of came about. He's been on the scene for a while now. Him and Spider-Man don't really like each other. They've fought one another. But Venom isn't really a bad guy. He just hates Spider-Man.
Yeah.
He does want to help people. But he also has no qualms kind of killing people that are bad. You know, it's like they're bad, they deserve this, you know? And so after he's been on the scene for a while, he kind of moves out west. He moves to San Francisco to I'm going to build my own life away from Spider-Man. And he gets there and he's basically recognized right away. He's apparently like most wanted in the entire country. So him thinking he can just move to San Francisco and like live a happy life, that I don't know what you were thinking, but that's what he does. And so then he kind of realizes he's homeless.
I just put like the time and the location together. Venom is running around San Francisco in 1993. These events happen concurrently to the events of Full House.
Yes. I kind of want that now. I kind of want to see Venom in a Full House style sitcom with all the other symbiotes.
Oh my god. He's just like the new Kimmy Gibbler. He
Amazing.
Just keeps showing up and barging into your house.
Amazing. This is ridiculous. Yeah, so he shows up in San Francisco. Nothing goes right. He ends up kind of being homeless, and he stumbles across this like group of homeless people who are living in this underground, I would say cave, but it is a part of San Francisco that sunk in an earthquake. And they are kind of hesitant to take him in. They end up voting him out. But in the meantime, Venom kind of discovers a plot that is going to threaten their lives. And so he wants to do the right thing and kind of help him out. He does have a little bit ulterior motives, but not bad ones.
No.
But yeah, so he wants to help him out, and then action ensues. Spider-Man finds out that he's wreaking havoc in San Francisco, so he's like, oh, what now? I'm gonna go chase him down, and he flies out to San Francisco and helps out, and yeah, action, explosions, malls, 90s.
Yeah, more Venoms. There's this, it's called like the Life Foundation or something. It's this organization that wants to build like these bunkers basically for rich people if there's some sort of an apocalypse. And they want to provide those people with guards, incredibly like adept guards. And they're like, how about we take these guards we already have that are pretty good humans, but we put the symbiote stuff on them, and then those are the guards you're going to pay money for.
Yeah, exactly. That's super 90s.
Yep, so Spider-Man has to fight 5 Venoms.
Basically, I don't think they name them in this series, but I know they do have names. I think one is... I think they started to like infer the names from stuff they said in this book. I think the one that they shot with the beam and it started to decay, I think his name actually is Decay. But I could be wrong. I'm kind of speaking out of my ass on that, but I know they are named. I just don't know what they are.
Kyle, we don't have to talk about this now, but can you explain to me who Carnage is?
Yes, so you...
Okay.
Actually, I'm going to save that for spoiler territory.
Oh,
even though it's
okay.
not in...
Okay.
It's not... Carnage is not really in this story at all. He's mentioned, but that's it. But yeah, I'll get into spoiler stuff.
Yeah,
There's things I don't want to reference for people who don't want spoilers.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. Anything else to add to like synopsis, general thoughts?
There's a lot of Spider-Man in it. Like, I imagined he might have made a cameo, but nope, it's like a third a Spider-Man story.
Yeah.
So if you are a Spider-Man fan, and you don't usually go out for, like, villain side stories, there may really be something here for you. You spend lots of times with old Pete.
Yeah. I think this is also a good story for understanding the character. It's a good first Venom comic book because it sums up his origin. Doesn't go super into details, but it gives you what you need to know. The short version, and then it's kind of Venom's first adventure on his own, or at least that we see mainly from his perspective. And it's good, it's fun, and I think it helps people to understand that he's not just a bad guy. I think there's a lot of people out there who's like, oh, he's a Spider-Man villain. He's a villain. He's evil. He's a bad guy. It's like, well, no, not really. I mean, yes, sometimes he will murder people and stuff like that, and that kind of comes back to bite him in this story. But it's really that he just hates Spider-Man.
He seemed to me like if he's like the super villain equivalent of the civilian threat of J. Jonah Jameson.
Kind of.
Like, a pretty good guy just does not like Spider-Man, and that's really it about him.
Yeah. Long story short, Eddie Brock, who is the guy that is Venom, he was also a reporter, and he was writing this big long story on a serial killer. And he had a source that he thought was the serial killer, and the guy was confessing to all of this stuff. So he does this big long expose on this serial killer, and one of his articles finally outs him. This is the guy. Go arrest him. And so they arrest him. It goes out on the press, all the newspapers go out, and I think in the Spider-Man The Birth of Venom book that I read, it said within an hour and a half Spider-Man caught the real guy, and so then it was all over the news. So he ruined his life, Spider-Man, without even knowing. Just screwed up this guy's career and his life. He was never going to be a reporter again because now he was lying he's making up the story, So bad times for Venom. That's he just hates Spider-Man. But yeah, go check it out. I don't know how much this is going to tie into the movie at all. I don't know. I could see them kind of tying in certain things. But I do not know. I have not seen the movie or where it goes. That being said, let's start getting into spoiler territory in just a sec here. Let's do housekeeping first.
Okay,
that will give you guys a chance to pause this, go read said Venom Lethal Protector comic book, and come back. Actually, you know what? Let me pull it up here on my phone. I want to we need to get better about this because we stopped doing it a long time ago, and we need to start again. We need to start mentioning the creators of each of the things that we do. So let's see. Yeah, the writer is Dave Michelin, I believe is how you pronounce it. The penciler is Mark Bagley. Letterer is Richard Starkings, with inker is Sam De La Rosa. And the colorists are Marie Javins. There you go. It's only 6 issues long, and it reads pretty quickly. Venom Lethal Protector from 1993. Go check it out. There we go. Now back to Twitch on my phone so I can make sure we are doing everything right. Whoops, so the Twitch app always pauses whenever you leave the thing, and you have to restart the app to get it to go back to live, kind of. Okay, so housekeeping. Same stuff we've always been saying the past couple weeks here. Go follow us on YouTube and Twitch. We could really use your help on both of those platforms. You can find us on YouTube just by searching the Whatnauts podcast. And you can find us on Twitch at twitch.tv/the Whatnauts. You could be watching this live right now. You could be joining in the conversation, letting us know what you think of everything we watch week in and week out. We would love to have you guys be a part of the show. You can also find us on our website at thewhatnauts.com, and you can catch all of our live streams on our website as well, thewhatnauts.com/live streams. That it's basically just our Twitch page embedded into that. So go do that, follow us there, and iTunes reviews. iTunes reviews are super helpful, and we really need some new ones because we don't have any since we started using these new RSS feeds, so we need some help. Please. There we go. Housekeeping is done, short and sweet. Let's move on. Spoilers.
Yes.
So you had a question about Carnage.
Because it came up, and everything that was happening in this comic book, I recognized it was at least vaguely familiar. And somebody mentions Carnage, and I'm like, oh yeah, I've heard of Carnage. And then I stop, and I'm like, I know that name. I don't know who or what Carnage is.
Yes, so I wanted to move this into the spoiler territory because I didn't want to mention the seeds. I know we mentioned that there are multiple quote-unquote Venoms, as you put them. There are other symbiotes. But they are seeds of Venom. They're his offspring, basically. I guess the symbiotes, and I know they have a name too. They're actual alien, they're the race of those aliens. They have a name. It's something with a K, but I don't remember off the top of my head. Apparently in this book they are asexual and reproduce by themselves. Apparently. But so in this book, while I guess it's the Life Foundation that has Venom captured, or whoever the dude is that has Venom captured, they extract his seeds. They extract 5 of them, which apparently Venom only had 6 from what this book said. They said these were the last 5.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so they use those seeds to make other symbiotes. Carnage was the first offspring of Venom that popped out.
Okay.
The first baby Venom. Except, so if Spider-Man is good and Venom is kind of in between, Carnage is the one that is just pure evil.
Okay.
This symbiote went and attached to a host that was a serial killer. So,
is this the same serial killer we were talking about earlier, or a different one?
No. His name is Cletus Cassidy.
Okay.
Yep, Cletus. What a great name.
Nobody named that lives in New York City.
I mean, he might not be from New York City and just went there to go murder the city folk. You never know. But yeah, so he, if Venom is I just really hate Spider-Man and I'm a villain in that sense, but besides that, I kind of want to help people and save them, Carnage is the one, I'm just gonna fucking murder everyone. So yeah, there's some big famous Spider-Man storylines with Carnage and Venom and Spider-Man all fighting and stuff like that, so there you go. Hope.
Thank you for this helpful background information.
Yes.
I could have looked it up, but I'm like, no, it's more fun if you just ask Kyle.
It's relevant information for the show too, kind of. But yeah, where do you want to start with spoilers? Do we want to go into the plot to destroy the homeless people?
Yeah. Oh, I just Googled pictures of Carnage to make sure I was
He's
picturing
red,
the
yeah.
right guy. He is red.
A lot more goopy.
He looks like Emperor Zed from Power Rangers if you took like the silver exoskeleton off.
There you
Like
go. Yeah.
He's just gross, weird muscles.
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically.
Yes. But no, that was my favorite subplot in this book was they call them street people, which I guess is fair because they do technically have homes. They just, and that was bananas. Like when it's
they have a council and everything. They have a better working government than we do.
They're fighting in the tunnels. They're down in like these sewers and these big like part mole people, part like aliens, the movie Aliens robots, like these exosuits come out and they're fighting and then they like fall through a hole and then it says, "We fell back in time?" And I'm like, this is a completely different comic than I thought it was going to be.
Like,
if Venom just fell back like a century.
Yeah, which is what they thought, but is not the case. Because I was sitting there, I was like, I didn't know this book had time travel in it. I was like, why did no one tell me this?
No, they have fallen through to a part of 1906 San Francisco that after the earthquake was just built over, which I don't know if that's real.
Well,
yeah.
It's supposedly that portion of the city sunk in like a big sinkhole thing, but it was a huge one. And it was destroyed enough that they didn't want to try and kind of like lift it back up and stuff, and fix it. So the city just kind of built over it, but it's strange to me how stuff like that happens because it's not like they filled it in with anything. They literally just like built a roof on top of it and then started to build on top of that. So I don't know how that works exactly, but yes, there is this like underground portion of San Francisco that basically everyone had forgotten about. And these homeless people kind of stumbled upon it and made that their home. So you're right. They're not exactly homeless in this, but they have like a whole town.
Yeah, and I liked that they are not from 1906.
No.
Who knows how long ago this was founded? Maybe there were people who found this, in the mid 20th century, and the people that we see living there were born in the darkness. But I thought it was really funny that even though this is not 1906, they kind of act like it's 1906 because they all have names like Elizabeth and Timothy and Nathaniel.
I feel like those are pretty common names, at
I don't
least for
know,
us white people.
I thought it was funny that like such a thing as a nickname does not exist down here. Like, it felt weirdly also old-fashioned, even like though it was not actually from the past.
The fact that they used the whole name and not like Tim or Liz, which is a lot more 90s.
No.
Or like Lizzie. Yeah, that I guess I didn't really pay attention to that, but I guess they did. That's strange.
Yeah, I kept waiting for them to run into like a Jedediah or a Hortense.
Yeah, no, I mean, I didn't get the vibe that they were like old-fashioned or like Amish people. No. But yeah, that is a strange quirk. They do have their own kind of form of government.
Yes.
Which is kind of like a democratic council. Just the leaders of the tribe kind of voting on what they want. And yeah, it seems like it's the most powerful people in there too, so that is also strange to me. You would think the the people who used to be homeless or poor that didn't have anywhere else to go wouldn't rely on the decisions of the most powerful or like the most rich or the most important in this, because they have the guy. He have like the weird like sideburns. Like he actually looked like some business magnate from the 20s. Like he looked like he was like a coal businessman.
Yeah. See, that was also part of it. Like, why does this feel? This just has past aesthetics still attached to it.
Despite all that, they can kind of go to and from and live in the 90s.
Yeah,
and,
they can outside,
go to the mall. They can play Bop It. They can play Simon or
they
whatever
can
that
Dunkaroos.
game was. They can eat
all
Dunkaroos.
I
miss Dunkaroos, man. I want them. Anyways, yeah, and then they had a religious preacher guy who looked like he was some kind of war vet. He had an eye patch, and he seemed like he was going to be the bad guy at first, or like the one in the long run. Like, this is gonna be the bad guy. You have to take him down because he's corrupt or something. But why was this? You mentioned this was kind of your favorite B plot. What spoke to you about this besides the wacky, out of time anachronism thing?
It is just so weird. Like, I've never seen anything else like this in a contemporary story, and I liked that it was. I like the very practical thing of Eddie Brock moves across the country and he just can't find a place to live. Like, not even Venom, but just Eddie Brock is having troubles. And these people take him in. And he decides, almost like, those 7 dwarves taking Snow White, and she's like, okay, I'm going to take care of all your chores for you in repayment for this tremendous service you were offering for me. He's like, okay, I am here to protect you because you took me in when nobody else would.
Yeah.
And I like that he's taking on this very specific responsibility beyond just like, I want to be a better person, I want to help people. He's like, these people help me, I'm paying them back. It just seemed like a very kind of noble, purposeful, sweet thing for Venom to be out there doing. Yeah, and again, just the image of like this weird black gooey space monster with 90 teeth and this underground 1906 San Francisco city. Just like, this weird creature is this weird environment's weird protector. Like, I almost wish the comic was like just that. Just like Venom trying to keep people from like sneaking into this.
I kind of thought that's what it was going to be, but again, this is a 90s era comic book where they're still packing in a lot of stuff that happens. And so the story kind of moves on from them. We kind of forget about them. Most of the actual story is not really about them, and even at the end is not like, it's just like, okay, well, you saved us, thanks, you can live here now. It's like, okay, that was that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like there's these out of time people, the street people. I don't know what the right thing to what they are.
Yeah, the comic said street people, and I'm like, I guess that's fair.
I don't know. But yeah, so they're living down there, and there's the leader of the Life Foundation, which for some reason doesn't like them and seems to be hunting them down, and doesn't know exactly where they are. Yeah, and he's searching for them. But the reason behind that, you want to tackle that? You look like you're chomping at the bit there.
Yeah, there's gold in them there. 1906 sunken San Francisco city hills.
Yes.
And so it was this plot where back in 1906 there was this anti-America like anarchist group that got a bunch of gold to fund themselves, and then the earthquake hit and all the gold sunk, and this was just a tiny group just starting to rise up. So, like, nobody knew they were a real threat, and nobody knew there were these people that had all this gold, except this guy goes and finds out about it in, like, historical records. And I think it says something like, using history and science, he targeted where the gold would be today.
Amazing. It's wild. Like, an early 1900s anarchist group buys a whole bunch of gold, or is given a whole bunch of gold to fund their activities to bring down San Francisco. And that's in an odd way is very 90s in and of itself. Like, let's bring down the whole city. Like, and I didn't expect any of this in this book. Like, I think what I was expecting out of this book was Venom moves to San Francisco and he tries to do the superhero thing.
Yes.
And it's your typical superhero stories, him chasing down muggers, bank robbers, stuff like that, but him kind of killing them, and then the people kind of reacting based off of that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, he's a menace. He's not a menace. He's just like Spider-Man. And them being like, well, no, he's actually killing these bad guys, and crime has gone down, and he's not really hurting people if you're not doing crime. So maybe he's good. You know, that like the whole name is Lethal Protector, right? Like,
yeah.
I thought it was going to focus more on that. And I mean, I guess that is what he's doing. His kind of ulterior motive is, hey, I'm going to protect these street people living underneath the town so that they will accept me and like accept me as their protector. But it wasn't really the typical, like, I guess stereotypical superhero thing. Because the Life Foundation guy wants to find this gold, so much so that he's willing to, like, he bought the land that he thinks the gold is buried in, and he's planning on some big renovation, and he is willing to, it happens to be right like above all of these street people. So he's still willing to destroy it, knowing full well that there's somewhere down there. He doesn't know exactly where, but if he blows this thing up, which is what he plans on doing, he's basically going to kill them all. And he's like, but I'll get a lot of gold for it from these past anarchists who want to destroy San Francisco.
I wish that these, like, 1906 living people had, like, the street people we see today had, like, found all that gold and, like, just used it for stuff. Like, it was almost like this road to El Dorado thing.
Their doorknobs and their lampposts.
Yeah, yeah. I wish it was, you know, like, where the streets are paved with gold. Like, literally, like, there's so much gold that they just use it in everyday mundane ways.
Yeah.
That was the one thing this story needed.
Yeah. So that is kind of the crux of the problem, right? Big rich dude wants to be richer. Poor people are unsuspecting that they're about to get blown up, and Venom is going, gosh darn it, I should do something. And then Spider-Man shows up.
I do want to take a second. It is almost just like, gosh darn it, because there are parts where Venom is so upbeat. Like, this comic is weirdly, like, it's so exuberant and, like, cheerful and peppy in some regards, which is, I like it ultimately, but it's really not what I was expecting. I was really expecting a lot more of Venom struggling with being Venom, of having that, like, living dichotomy of I am alien and I am man, and now we are fused together. And no, Venom is already perfectly happy being Venom. Like, they already have the whole relationship worked out, which is kind of sweet to see, actually.
Yeah.
To, like, see Venom being happy being Venom.
He's kind of already worked that stuff out in past Spider-Man comics.
Yeah, so I am glad they didn't, even though that's what I was expecting, I don't think that's what I actually wanted.
Sure.
To see Venom freaking out about being Venom. I'm glad that it was already settled and they decided not to do it again.
Yeah, it's good. I guess long story. I don't know why I'm showing like a spoilery synopsis of this stuff, because we normally don't do it that way. But yeah, Venom ends up being captured by the Life Foundation. Kind of, he's tricked into coming with them, and he's captured. That's when they extract the other Venom symbiotes from him and create the 5 other kind of Venom-like super soldiers. And yeah, Spider-Man is there. Spider-Man helps out. I was glad as I was reading it, knowing it's only 6 issues long, I was kind of disappointed how much Spider-Man was there.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm like, he wasn't overbearing, I thought.
Yeah, it was still Venom's story.
Yeah, it's still ultimately Venom's story, and I'm happy that it was that. That was my main concern as I was reading it. I was like, is this just going to turn into like 50-50 like Venom Spider-Man story? And I still would have, I think, preferred less Spider-Man in this book.
Yeah.
I liked that he showed up. I think he needed that cameo. What did you think? Was the ratio of Spider-Man good? Was it bad? Was it too much? What do you think they could have done differently?
I would have liked there to be a little bit too much Spider-Man, and you're right, he is not overbearing. It doesn't feel like the story is weirdly paced or anything like that, or weirdly structured. But considering that this is Venom's like first solo title, I would have expected there to be more solo Venom and not, oh, he's still fighting Spider-Man, I see.
Yeah, I didn't want them to use Spider-Man as a crutch, and every now and again it starts to feel like that, but then it shifts back, so it's like, okay, you're trying to get away from it, but you know that people still want it, you know. Because I'm sure at this being the first Venom story, it's like, but look, it has Spider-Man in it too. Spider-Man is super popular. Go buy this book.
Yeah.
I didn't want Spider-Man in there as much as I did. I think it takes away from the time spent with Venom and kind of figuring out more about this character. Every time it switched to Spider-Man's perspective, I was like, I don't want this. Just tell me this story. Tell me all these details from Venom's perspective. Like, the whole, there's a big fight scene with Spider-Man and that first like female symbiote at the mall. I almost didn't want that whole fight scene at all. Don't show me that. Like, as much as I love Spider-Man, this is not his book. Like, I have it be from Venom's perspective, where Spider-Man shows up and it's just like, so I just beat, you know, this person. Now let's go beat these other people. You know, it's like, okay, cool, let's go.
First off, I was so excited. I'm like, oh, we're going to the mall. We're going to the mall in 1993, and it's a couple of like, you know, beige shapes in the background, just like incredibly vague storefronts, and I was so disappointed I didn't get like the big sweeping atriums with the giant skylights and palm trees and a fountain and
a reference to like Jay and Silent Bob in the background or something.
Nobody
you know.
goes to a Sam Goody. What am I even here for?
Exactly.
And the book, you know, when it's with Spider-Man, it talks about Mary Jane. Like, he calls back to Mary Jane sometimes, which is good. Like, I'm glad to see, after a lot of my exposure to Spider-Man has been the relationship drama Spider-Man, where he's like, I like Mary Jane, but how do I tell her? Like, this is probably one of the few things I've ever read or watched or encountered where him and Mary Jane are already a set, stable couple. So I like seeing a little bit of that, but
I don't know if I would
like,
say
why
stable.
Stable enough. I mean,
sure. They've been having a lot
Stable.
of problems. Actually, in that Spider-Man Birth of Venom stuff, it's that they have a number of collection of issues, and then there's a couple pages that are like it's just text of like, well, here's what happened in this time and stuff like that, and here's a panel to explain, and stuff like that. And yeah, it's they finally get engaged, they get married. She reveals she's always kind of known that he was Spider-Man, stuff like that. But then they have to move apartments because when Venom first shows up, he shows up to scare Mary Jane. And Spider-Man's were like, well, now he knows where I live, so we should move. And then they do, and they get this really, really nice apartment. And they're there for, I think, like less than a year. And again, they have to move. And so they have a rough marriage, and it is very tough. And yeah.
But they look here more stable than they are in Spider-Man 3, which again, as previously stated, is really what I have to compare this to. But anyhow, I like Mary Jane. I like seeing Spider-Man and Mary Jane together, but like, why are we spending time on this when I have no idea if Eddie Brock has ever had a girlfriend? Like, shouldn't we talk about that first?
Yeah, I think there is a brief mention at the start of the book why they're not killing each other that mentions his ex-wife.
That's right.
Spider-Man saved her, and he was like, all right, well, thanks. Maybe I won't kill you,
Yeah, but like, more about that. Like, are you still in touch with her? Does she know you're Venom? Are you gonna try and start are you gonna date now that you've moved to the other end of the country? What about this nice street woman? Do you want to date her? Like, can we talk about this first before we talk about like what Spider-Man's relationship is?
How do you feel about stories that focus on a more villainous character? There's been a lot of discussion about like superhero movies that are, especially in the Spider-Man universe, that they're like, oh, we're gonna make a Sinister Six movie, we're gonna make a Venom movie, which they did and is out now and we still have not seen. There was stuff like, oh, we're gonna make a Black Cat movie. Scratch that. It's gonna be Black Cat and Silver Sable in the same movie, and it's just like, what? Why? Like, these are villains. Like, there's a reason they're not. They don't have their like. As much as I think people like Venom as a character, his own comic book has never really been able to stand the test of time and last long. Like I don't know off the top of my head what the longest ongoing Venom series is, but it's not been much. And that happens with multiple characters, and it's usually stuff like this where they're anti-heroes or they're villains or stuff like. So what are your thoughts on that? Is that even possible to make a character like that interesting enough that we want to follow them and have their own book consistently?
I think so. I've always been a villain person. Like, when I was a little kid,
We've heard it here first, folks. Melissa is a criminal. She is a villain person, as she said.
No, but like, as a little kid, I always loved the cartoon supervillains. Sure. Like, I loved Team Rocket. They're so high up the list, I can't even think about who was even the close second, because the close second is miles behind Team Rocket, but you get what I'm saying. And another thing I'm a huge... I
was just going to say, is that... Do you like those characters because of kind of the wacky, over-the-top hijinks that they... The obstacles that they present the heroes? Or do you find them actually interesting character? Like, is there enough to make you be like, I would actually buy an ongoing book only about them being, it's not the, I mean, I guess to bring it back to Venom, right? Like, it's not this book where it's 50-50, Spider-Man, Venom, like, it is only them.
I would. I think a really good example of a villain who is a, again, I wouldn't say hero, but protagonist. A villain who is a really compelling protagonist is Netflix Daredevil's Wilson Fisk. That was my favorite part of season 1 of Daredevil. In season 2, which I also enjoyed, I'm like, yeah, but Wilson, I go back to him, please, more of him. And it was particularly his relationship with his girlfriend that was outstanding. By far my favorite part of that entire series they had building. That's something I'm a huge sucker for, is villains that have romances. That juxtaposition of, you know, I can do such dark things, such cruel things, but when it comes to you, I am a completely different person, and you I will always treat correctly. That's a story I always love, time after time. And so I think if they had more stories like that, definitely, for sure. Like, I don't want to see Venom go out there and just try and do the vigilante thing. I want to see Eddie Brock go out there, try and find a new girlfriend, and then have to explain to her. Yeah, and then try to explain to her, I've done some vigilantism in the past. What do you think about that? And see how that relationship deals with that.
First date question?
Yeah, that's what I want more than anything.
Like, I can see that, like, I can see that being a mini series. Being a graphic novel, just this one-off story, this limited time only thing. But I don't know if that sustains like the number of comics that Spider-Man has had over the years, or Superman, or Batman, you know, whoever. Like, I don't know if it can sustain that. I think it's obvious that people like villains and connect with them if they are humanized in some way, if they are made sympathetic. I mean, sure, duh, that makes sense. If you make something sympathetic, you will sympathize with it, right? But I don't know. I think it can be done.
Yes.
I don't know if we have enough good examples to really say, like, here, look at this. Like, this is a clear example of how it can be done, right? Because people always point to Magneto as a sympathetic villain. You mentioned Kingpin in the Daredevil Netflix series. I think those are great examples. I don't know if then that goes on to sustaining a full, like, 75 years worth of stories.
I think the thing is, a hero is very interesting on their own with just, like, stock problems. You know, a great enough hero can be compelling even if they're just fighting, like, thug number 1, thug number 2, thug number 3. A villain is more about... I love seeing a villain deal with just other people. I love relationships a villain has and relationships around a villain. And I don't know if it's as interesting to have a villain fight hero number 1, hero number 2, hero number 3, because you need that kind of circling relationship around them of what people think about them and how those feelings, like, change, and are you growing closer to this person? Are you going farther away? How do your thoughts about them change? Like, stories of heroes learning to like their villains, or not learning to like them, but just, like, getting used to them, where it's like, I hate you, but in that you are still important to me.
Yeah.
And I don't want to see you succeed, but if you suddenly, like, vanished, like, if I didn't kill you, if you just, like, slipped and fell and died that way one day, it'd be like, oh, my life's kind of missing something now.
Yeah.
Like, that sort of thing I love.
I feel like it's more, we like the stories about humans becoming villains.
Yes.
Right? It's the, when you see Fisk's relationship, which now I forget her name. Do you remember her name?
Vanessa.
Vanessa, yes.
Yes.
Like, when you see that relationship between Fisk and Vanessa, it is normalizing, right? It is this, oh, they are actually just normal people, but then you see him kind of go down this dark hole, right? I think that's why people like Breaking Bad so much.
Ah, yes.
Because he's a normal guy. He's a teacher. He loves his family. He just wants to help them and provide for them. And in doing so, he just digs himself deeper and deeper and deeper into this hole, to the point where he becomes unrecognizable, and he's this he's this fucked up villain, right? And I think even with that, like, despite it going on for like 6 or 7 seasons, that is the story. Like, that story could not have gone on for much longer than it did, right? Because once he is the villain, it's like, okay, that's it. He's the bad guy now. Like, we you know, it's hard to explain. I feel like
I think people like to see either a rise or a fall.
Yes.
And to have one long-running story about a villain kind of doesn't really give you either. Because if they're a villain when they start out, having them fall to be more of a villain just seems like not fun, not pleasant. Like,
seems almost pointless.
Yeah, and to have them rise, that works for some people. For example, Magneto can become quite heroic. But I don't know if there's a lot of other villains that could do that. Like, I don't know if anybody would read a story about, like, Scarecrow becoming more and more of a hero.
Well, people do like redemption stories.
Mm-hmm.
So I can see them doing that, but I was gonna say it's one of those things that's like, once I think it actually goes both ways too, because this is kind of the problem of comics as well, right? Where it's like seeing a hero continually be a hero and become even more of a hero kind of gets boring after a while, right? So you do kind of have to mix it up and stuff like that. But it's like it works both ways. If you just see like a villain becoming more and more villainous, it's kind of like, okay, well, we get it, we get the point. Yeah. He's a bad guy. But some people would argue that comics are uninteresting because it is this, like, how do we move the story along without actually moving the story along, right?
Yeah, and that was something about this book that I also kind of wanted to touch on, that, like, it was kind of fun. It was, a neat adventure, but, like, I didn't feel attached to anything
afterwards.
And I think it's also partially because I know that this is from 1993, and I know, like, these characters are still out there today, so I know what I'm looking at is impermanent. It is fleeting. It's just like this one-time whim of a thing, and it doesn't seem to have any weight to it.
Yeah.
And as tremendous as of a storytelling medium as comics can be, and how there have been really important, like, really emotional comics arcs out there, I think in general, like, the story that was really cool 20 years ago was just like, well, and then they picked it up and they moved on and they did other things. Like, what this is fun, but it doesn't mean anything anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I guess might be one of the kind of bigger critiques of this book, right? Like, I don't felt like it really moved the needle for Venom. It didn't make me understand him differently. It didn't make me it didn't make me like him more or like him less. It just kind of maintained that status quo. Like, okay, I mean, he's a cool character. I like him. That's about it.
Yeah. And what we learn about, again, not really Venom, but Eddie Brock, is when Spider-Man goes and he talks to Eddie Brock's father, and his father refuses to see him, but the housekeeper does talk to Spider-Man. He might be... No, I think he is Peter at this point. I don't remember if he has the mask on or not.
He first goes as Peter and gets the door slammed on his face, and then comes back as Spider-Man.
Okay, so Spider-Man learns all of this stuff about Eddie Brock's past that we imagine is going to change how he views Eddie Brock and how he views Venom going forward. But this is Venom's story. Like, we are learning something about Venom, but we're not learning how Venom / Eddie Brock feels about this. This is just a chunk of exposition that is being given to Spider-Man a character who shouldn't be in this story that much longer, and to us. And so we're learning, but we don't know how, like, we learn these facts about Eddie, but we don't know, like, the feelings about Eddie. Like, how does he feel looking back on his past? Like, you know, how does he want to grow from it? What are, you know, his father was not good to him. Does he want to? Is he scared of being a father? Does he want to be a father? And kind of redeem that within himself. Like, no, I'm going to be a father too, and I'm going to do it better than my father ever did. Mm-hmm. Like, what are his feelings? And we don't get to learn those. And I don't think this book also doesn't have any sort of like a coda at the end of Venom just sort of looking back on the events of this book and saying, okay, this is what I got out of this. This is how I am going to live going forward now that this has happened.
Yeah.
Besides the practicality of, now I live here. I know these people.
It's Full House. Now, now it's Full House. Yeah. I think that sums it up pretty well, you know. Like, it's just it's a fun romp. We get a little bit more exposition, but it doesn't really play into this story or what we think of Venom.
Yeah.
So,
like, there's stuff I learned just having not been very familiar with Venom to begin with.
Again, I mentioned before, I think this is a good first, like, Venom book. Like, if you've never read anything Venom, like, this is a good one to pick up. It gives you his backstory. It's a first fun adventure, you know. But yeah.
It kind of gives you a basic outline of his ethics. Like, there's, like, every one of these sort of anti-hero villain who can also be a protagonist sort of characters is a little bit different from each other. Like, Catwoman has a certain amount of greed to her. Or not greed, but just like she's a burglar, like she steals things. She's got kind of a Robin Hood thing going. And I learned, Venom appears to not have any of this, because he looks at that guy who's out there to dig all the gold out from 1906 in San Francisco and says, he seeks wealth at the cost of innocent lives? Never! It's like, okay, that's a good, clear, moral statement about Venom that I was...
Sir Galahad.
I was not aware of this to begin with, because I'd never looked that closely at him, and, like, I don't know if this is great storytelling, but it is just a good filler information for me. Like, okay, this is part of the Venom fact sheet that I am getting, and I am glad to have it.
Yeah. What did you think of the art? Let's talk about the art real fast before we wrap it up.
It didn't feel like anything very special to me. Like, it seemed exactly what it should be. More than competent, clearly illustrated. Nothing was overly cartoony or exaggerated or overly, like, stocky and stoic. But, yeah, it just sort of felt, like, what it was, like, nothing about it. Yeah, nothing about it really, like, surprised me. I will say, this is kind of about the art and kind of about the writing, you know, in tandem. I think they made good use of San Francisco, beyond just, like, let's put him at a city very far away from Spider-Man. Let's just go across a map of the U.S. and say opposite end of the country, just some big flashy city with cool buildings we can draw. Like, beyond that, they're like, let's look at the history and the culture of San Francisco. Like, they use that 1906 earthquake, this real event, as a big catalyst for how the story moves forward. And it, you know, San Francisco is a hub of, like, a culture and counterculture and, you know, people really going out there and thriving and being creative and being themselves. And it's also a big business hub. And this story seemed to really reflect both parts of that. And I think that was really good.
Yeah.
Like, I appreciated that they didn't just pick a place that seemed cool. They're like, okay, what can we really use here?
Yeah, that's cool. Mark Bagley is the one that's doing pencils on here. His art is fantastic. He's a very, very well-known comic book artist. This is kind of right around the time where comics really started to just begin to be stylized. DC and Marvel still very much have a house style, right? Where it's like, our books are gonna kind of all look like this. So we want our artists to kind of draw them like this too. So they all look the same, kind of, right? And that used to be a lot more heavily like, it needs to look like this. Your art will look like, and there was very few exceptions of like what could and could not be in the art. But in the like late 80s, early 90s, that's kind of when these superstar artists started to come up and like, oh, that was my phone, sorry about that. That's when these like superstar artists started to come up and start making a name for themselves and started to break the mold a little bit more. Mark Bagley, who did the art on this, I can kind of recognize his art. It's like, oh, like that's his stuff, you know. Jim Lee, I can recognize his stuff. Todd McFarlane, I can recognize his stuff. And they all kind of got their rise right around this time. In fact, Image Comics was, I think, started in like 1992, but it was like right at this time. This came out in 1993, and yeah, it was a bunch of artists and writers who all left Marvel and DC because they were fed up with a whole bunch of different stuff, and they're like, we're gonna make our own comics and we're gonna make them how we want, and we're gonna actually own the characters. And that's when you start to see these big superstar artists make a name for themselves. And after they did that, Marvel and DC was like, actually, we'll hire you again if you want to make books look like that, you know. So it's neat because like I think the art is still very stock. It's not super stylized. It's fairly typical of what you would see comic book wise late 80s, early 90s. But it's still in the era. It's like, oh, that's Mark Bagley. I can kind of recognize his artwork there, you know.
I knew you'd have all kinds of insight into this that I would have no clue about. And I'm like, I guess it looks like what I imagined things in 1993 would look like.
I got used to Mark Bagley's art because he drew one of my favorite Spider-Man comics, which is Ultimate Spider-Man. He did that for a long, long time. And it's very, like, if you compare the two, you're like, okay, yeah, you know, it's the same person. Ultimate Spider-Man is a lot more stylized though, but it's still you can see where he started out and then went to this thing. It's like, oh, okay, that's neat. I like that. So yeah, it was good. It was good to see his earlier artwork.
I don't want to do this 2 weeks in a row, but while we're talking about the art, I was very distracted in like kind of the last chunk of the book when Venom is in the lab. Do you know what I'm going to start talking about?
I'm assuming more boobs.
No, oh no, no.
Because last week you were like, well, I have this thing I kind of want to talk about. I don't know if you thought about the same thing. Let's talk about boobs.
No, it was a dick this time.
No, I do not know what you were talking about this time though. So okay, enlighten me.
Eddie Brock is having he's having the symbiote like ripped away from him, and of course he doesn't really wear clothes under that. I guess he could, but he doesn't have to. And so as like the symbiote's being torn away from him, you know, due to like all these scientific procedures he's under, it is like this distracting, like there's probably like not anything down there anymore, but we're not going to let you see it. I was the only one who picked up on this. Okay, fine.
Amazing.
I just thought it was just it's not trying to be comical, but I found it comical that it's just like he's just always like behind something.
Yeah, I mean they have to. It's it's one of those things. So yeah, like when he's behind something and you can't see it, it looks like he's not wearing anything else. But then when he is kind of out in the open, it's like, oh, he has tidy whities on. He didn't have those on 2 seconds ago, I guess. Who knows? That's kind of it. It's kind of an unfortunate side effect for people who have the symbiotes on, because they react to your thoughts and your mental stuff, like you're just what you need. So it goes on you, and you don't need to wear clothes because it can like transform itself to look like that. Yeah. So they don't ever have to like change in and out of their costume or stuff like that. It's all just one thing. And yeah, and if you take it off, it's like, well, let's hope they weren't going commando.
Yeah, although I guess if he had like just enough symbiote left on him and he was very self-conscious, like the symbiote would just naturally like form briefs.
Who knows?
I don't know. I spent a lot of time thinking about this. Like, we're all familiar with, like, Hulk pants. Like, oh, no matter how big he gets, no matter what he was wearing to begin with, like, Bruce Banner always has, like, cut-off shorts on.
Yeah.
Or Hulk always has cut-off shorts on. Bruce Banner could be wearing whatever he wants.
So I guess the one time I noticed he wasn't wearing pants is when he kind of comes out of captivity and Spider-Man is in the hallway, like, fighting people. And yeah, it's very obvious that it, like, you see from the side, so you don't see anything, but it's very obvious that he just like walked out in the middle of the hall buck naked, and Spider-Man's like, okay, we need to help you, blah 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 blah, like, you know, like, just didn't make any mention of it. I was like, he's just like, come on, Spider-Man, you're the jokester, say something.
And I think this is because of my background of being primarily like a movie watcher, and I haven't read many comics. But, like, this made me realize, oh, so many, like, superheroes and supervillains have just seen each other's junk and just politely choose not to speak of it.
Well, I wouldn't say they wouldn't speak of it, because they all hook up. They've all had sex with everyone multiple times.
I want to read that book. I don't want to see them punch each other anymore.
Have you seen, I guess this is a side note, have you seen the Jessica Jones TV show on Netflix?
I have not seen that one.
Highly recommend it. Go watch it. The comics, Brian Michael Bendis created the character, but he created, I guess, like an imprint at Marvel specifically for that character, and like those. I guess I don't know if it was specifically for that character, but it was put in their like adult books.
Oh,
and the book, like the very first couple pages, the first like couple issues is Jessica Jones and Luke Cage having anal sex.
Wow.
Like, right there. Just like, oh, okay. We're going there. They're doing it.
Oh, boy.
But yeah, there's all sorts of stuff like that. Goodness gracious. This is ridiculous.
So, there's plenty of skimpy outfits and, like, side boob in comics.
Sure.
For titillation purposes. And when it comes to, like, cases like this where it's, like, clearly there's, like, some dude's junk kind of out, but not really. I don't know if this is titillating to anybody. Like, I wouldn't call it titillating. I just found it mildly comical. Even though it's not, like, you know, the Austin Powers joke where he's walking around the hotel room naked and, you know, there's just always props in front of him. Yeah. It's not that. It's not overtly comical, and it's not overtly sexual. It's in this middle place where it's not really either, but it's close enough to either part of those, either sides of that spectrum that, I mean, I don't know. I just looked at it and I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this. How do I feel about the fact that Venom is barely wearing anything?
So you mentioned the comical side of it. Yeah, it kind of is from time to time, but at the same time, it's like, come on, guys, just show it. Show the outline. Show the imprint. Do something, you cowards.
I
because
I wrote these notes in my notebook so close to Dangle, and we didn't get none. It wasn't there.
No Dangle.
No.
But like, so did you hear this whole thing about Batman's dick being shown?
Yes, I have not yet looked it up, but I'm gonna do that.
So again, DC Comics now has this other imprint. It's a recent one, and I think it's a little bit more adult, out of continuity kind of stuff like that. And yeah, there's a scene where Batman is taking off his bat suit, and you see his dick, and of course the internet just erupts. And from what I saw, no one was like, how dare you? This is a comic book. This is for children, blah, 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 which is absolutely not true. It's like, this is their adult line, and adults read comic books too, guys. Calm down. But it's this thing of like, they show tits and ass and all sorts of different angles and awkward positions, and how is she bending like that and stuff, but there's almost none of that for the guys, and
it's time for a dick.
It really is. And it was weird to see DC's reaction to this whole Batman thing, because in the digital edition they took it out because of the backlash. And it's like, I didn't actually see anyone like giving you guys a backlash. Like, we just thought it was funny that we actually got to see it. Like, it's like there needs to be equal opportunity is all I'm saying.
Yes. And like, I'm no artist, Kyle, but I imagine a dick is much harder to draw than boobs or a butt. There's a lot more shape and texture to it. Like, if somebody took the time to draw a dick, like, don't hide that artist's hard work.
No pun intended. Yeah, it's like, it's one of those things I don't think a lot of people think about until it happens, right? Like, until we got to see Batman's dick, sure, there are some people out there who's like, how come we haven't seen like men that are sexualized and objectified in these comics? I think even in this, didn't we get like a good butt shot of both the female symbiote and Mary Jane? Like, we got both of those, but like almost nothing that was sexualized. Like, we got some good muscles and abs and stuff from Venom, but I wouldn't call that sexualized.
No, just sort of generally like beefcakey buff.
Yeah. Which I guess the Mary Jane one wasn't really sexualized. It was farther away, but it's still like she's in this like super 80s, early 90s workout, like leotard bodysuit thing.
And I looked at it and I'm like, yeah, I can see how that is legitimate workout gear. Like, that, this doesn't seem crazy to me.
Sure.
Like, this is fine. She's wearing a believable outfit, and she's not in a crazy pose. Yeah, and she is just like standing there talking to Peter on the phone. She's not like in the middle of some pose while she's on the phone. She's just standing there.
We got one, I think it was in this book, I could be wrong, I think it was of the female Venom symbiote, and it's just like full on booty shot. And it's like she has like one leg up, she's sticking it out, and it's like, it's none, like the panel isn't even about her. It's like Spider-Man in the background got knocked down, and it's just like you see it from behind her, and it's just like butt and Spider-Man real small in the background. It's just like, really? Come on, guys.
I have read more romance novels than I have read comics, and I think that's why I come to these with this perspective of, so there's a dick around and we're not going to mention it, huh?
Comics artists, back then especially, now not as much, but it still happens from time to time, like they used to just go out of their way, like, let's have a shower scene where Storm is naked.
Yes,
and
I am familiar with this.
Let's have a scene where Mary Jane is naked in the bed, and there's like this really thin silk sheet, you know, and it's just like, it's like they. And then when you almost see Venom's dick, it's just like they didn't draw it.
Yeah.
It's like, it should be right there. I should at least see some body hair or something.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, unless he waxes, but, like, who knows?
Maybe the symbiote can act as body wax. Like, we don't know.
Does Venom wax? New story from Peter Parker, the Daily Beagle. Asking the tough questions.
The toughest.
Yeah, I mean, it happens, and especially, like, late 80s, early 90s, there was this big, like, let's find all the ways we can make sexy pinup art for all these female characters, for all these women who are there, even though this story has nothing to do with them or them being naked.
Yeah.
Like, I don't mind the nudity and stuff like that, but it's just like, what I feel like it should be purposeful, or at least feel natural,
or at least be like fun and flirty. Like, if they know, if Jean Grey's like, oh, here comes Scott, let me, like, part of my sweater is falling off my shoulder. Hi, Scott.
As long as it's equal opportunity.
Yes. And as far as I can tell, there was a decent amount of, like, beef cakiness out there.
Yeah. Oh, well. Comics. Anything else to say about the art? Or whatever else? If you had to pick something to recommend to people, if they liked this, what else should they go check out?
Full House.
Full House. San Francisco in the 90s. Full House.
I recommend The Room. Yeah, I don't know. I think if you want a really great villain story, I think the best one out there is the Wilson Fisk storyline in season 1 of Daredevil.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good one. I was just gonna go, like, dude, go for some classic, like, 80s action films. Like, go watch some Schwarzenegger films. Go watch Rocky. Go watch Rambo.
Let's watch True Lies.
Yeah. Just stuff like that, because I feel like that's really the vibe of this comic. It's kind of like cheesy 80s action film. Mm-hmm. It's a good fun romp, as you put it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say on Venom. What I think we're doing things a little differently this week. Am I correct?
Yes, I am going on vacation next week, so we will not be recording at our regular time. We're pushing it back a day or two. And I decided that I made this executive decision that since we have this unique opportunity where I will be in a car for like 10 hours and we will both have a couple extra days to accomplish this, there's one particular audio drama I'd really like to cover. And this is a good time for it because, number one, it is spooky. It still fits in with my, my spree of Halloween-themed picks.
Perfect.
And number two, it's just a little bit longer than your average, like, audio drama we would cover on the show. I don't think it's longer than, like, any TV shows we've watched, but just a little long for the audio dramas.
Sure.
So, like, this is the perfect time for it. I'm just saying it's this one. Also, it's my birthday next week, and I feel like, I should just get to pick a thing.
Okay. There you go. Executive decision. Shut up, Kyle. I'm taking the wheel.
Kyle, we are going to be listening to the podcast King Falls AM.
I haven't listened to this, but I've been following them on Twitter forever. So I am excited.
It's one of my
Falls
favorites. Yeah, and we are going to listen to the first 25 episodes. That is the first year of the show.
Okay.
And their seasons / arcs are kind of divided by year by year. Kind of like Night Vale.
Okay. Pretty cool. General pitch. What is it about?
This is a podcast in the format of late night radio broadcasts. King Falls is a tiny town in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, and this new DJ named Sammy Stevens comes to town, and he is working the late night, like, AM radio shift there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's him and his co-host Ben just talking to each other, getting to know each other, getting to know all the weird people in the town that are awake at those hours and call in to them, and getting to know just the weird stuff around town. And some of it's kind of wacky, you know, like, oh, there's a lake monster, but some of it's like, people may really be getting abducted by aliens. Like, part of it is this sort of spooky, you know, threatening, there's a legit mystery, like a legit monster that we have to solve, we have to fix this, and some of it's just like, wacky. Like, I think it's got a good tone balance between those two things.
Between the two? Good. Okay. Mm-hmm. Cool. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this is a little bit different from how we normally do things. Normally, you and I will take turns pitching 3 options, but we're just going to go ahead and do this one for this next week. You mentioned it's your birthday coming up next week. What day is it on?
It's next Saturday. My birthday is October 13th. That is the same birthday as Fox Mulder. Not David Duchovny, but specifically fictional character Fox Mulder.
There you go. Well, speaking of birthdays, I guess this episode will be out the day after your birthday then, by the time this goes public. Mm-hmm. So everyone that is listening to this, make sure, if you haven't already, go give Melissa a happy belated birthday on Twitter. Speaking of birthdays, today, the day that we are recording this, is Jess Beaver's birthday.
Happy birthday,
another
Jess!
Member of the Whatnauts, who I've been trying to get back onto the captain's log for a little while. Speaking of that, I have something to ask you off mic here
Okie dokie.
In a sec. But yes, by the time this goes public, it will be a week after her birthday. But you guys should go give her some love as well. I believe that is it. Where can the people find you on the World Wide Web?
You can find me on Twitter at Wilkywit, WILKYWIT. And I am going on vacation next week, not for my birthday. I'm not that spoiled, just like at the same time as my birthday. I'm going to Chicago, so you can also follow me on Instagram under that same name if you want to see just cool Chicago pictures.
Sounds good. You can find me online at Hush315 on Twitter, and you can get updates for the show on Twitter at The Whatnauts. Go check out our website, thewhatnauts.com. I think, I don't know when, but sometime down the road here, I'm going to start doing throwback episodes. I finally took off the old Whatnauts RSS feed off of iTunes. So it is gone. You can no longer get the Whatnauts podcast on iTunes. So all of the old episodes that Paul and I did are no longer there. However, I want all those episodes to live on our website, and they are not all on there yet. So I think maybe once a week or twice a week. Who knows? I still haven't decided yet, and I don't know when I'll actually start this, but eventually I want to do like a throwback thing. Like, here's the very first episode that we did, and just start like reposting them, but only on our website. Be good archival stuff. Extra stuff on our website so that people can go to and have fun with. That being said, I think that's all the updates we got.
Yeah.
We are doing King Falls AM, the first 25 episodes is what you said?
Yes, that 25th episode is called, I think, Happy Samiversary. So that'll be the last one you'll be listening to.
Good to know. The first 25 episodes of King Falls AM. You can download that and listen to it for free anywhere you get podcasts. You can search it on iTunes or Google Podcasts. I think they have that. I think that's their new one.
I don't know.
I'm sure it's on Spotify.
I'm a podcast addict user.
Yes, and I know they're on Twitter as well. I'm sure you can just search King Falls AM to find out exactly what their Twitter thing is. Go check it out. Listen along with us. We will be recording maybe Monday or Tuesday night of this next week. So we'll just, keep an eye out. That's that. This has been episode 28 of the Whatnauts Review Show. We will see you guys next week. Adios.
Bye.